The president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Dr. Jasser, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Maria.
So Trump revealed details of his extreme vetting plan. What's your take on where we are in terms of the refugee inflow? It's now at 63,000. How do you see it?
Well, I think, first of all, it's good to reflect that the numbers actually show the percent of non-Muslims almost at 50%. So some of the commentary that there was discrimination against Christians and non-Muslims may not be as true as we thought. But also, as Mr. Trump has mentioned, the left has had a blind eye to vetting against the ideologies that threaten us. They've just been sort of doing background checks from enemy regimes like Syria and others, so there has been no vetting. It has left us completely vulnerable, and actually some polling has said 13% of those in Europe had sympathies for ISIS, so it's about time that we start to talk about how to vet them against the Salafi jihadi ideology and what Trump off script called extreme vetting, but I don't think it's extreme. I think it's the type of vetting that should be done. It is not a right to come to the United States. We have to make sure, Maria, that we're not allowing people that are going to come in as insurgents against our way of life. And it's about time our Homeland Security start to vet against theopolitical ideologies that want to destroy the West.
This seems so obvious to me, particularly at a time that we are seeing ISIS say publicly, we're going to infiltrate the refugee flow. And yet you don't hear this from the left at all, Lee. It's not a concern. And you also don't hear it from the mainstream media, by the way. And I'm just, why not?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because they've positioned this all as racist, they've positioned this all as unfair, but the bottom line is America, even way back with Ellis Island, you used to have people vouch for you. You didn't just come here without having any background check. And so I don't think this is extreme. I don't think that this is something, they're using all of these examples on the left of fear in the past. They're not using the examples of what we did from the very beginning of time and said, this is a privilege to be here. You need to want to be here.
Adding to this, and it's something that the left does not touch, that liberals and Democrats don't touch, and it's shameful, that radical Islamic ideology believes in the suppression and even of women, the suppression of gays, even the murder of anyone who is a lesbian or gay, and even those of different faiths. And Donald Trump said that explicitly earlier this week, and I think that that's kind of an exclamation point for him.
Dr. Jasser, weigh in here.
Well, I think, unfortunately, what happens is that the left, because it's so obsessed about the left versus right, how to use Muslims in this political partisan battle rather than how to keep America safe, the left in Europe has begun to wake up to this. The president of France has called about a war against Islamism. The head of Britain has called about identifying the ideology. So the Europeans are far ahead of us. Why? Because they've had more acts of war committed, but we aren't far behind. And unfortunately, we Muslims in the Muslim reform movement have been calling for this type of vetting for years, but we've been marginalized by the mainstream media, the left and others who really just want to use our faith community with a bigotry of low expectations that somehow, feminist issues, gay rights, all these things don't matter to Muslims. We'll just use them to check the box that we protect minorities, when in fact the majority countries of Muslims that the Muslims are trying to immigrate from actually don't protect those rights, and they don't share our values.
Don't you think, though, I mean, so many people are saying that this is unfair to Muslims, right? But isn't it really clear that this isn't about Muslims in general? This is about a very specific radical Islamic sect. And that differentiation isn't being made on the left.
Well, that's a really good point, because this is where I'm glad to finally see Mr. Trump narrow his language from just a ban on Muslims to talking about banning Islamists, theocrats who don't believe in our values. And most Muslims I know are against theocracy. The revolutions in the Middle East started about fighting not only secular dictatorships, but fighting theocracies. And one of the disconnects in his speech this week that I saw was he was completely right about vetting against the ideologies that threaten us for Muslims coming here, but yet when he talked about common ground with Russia, working with our allies, those are countries that are cauldrons whose leaders are theocrats and run Sharia states that are brewing these militants. So we have to have a common vision. We can't on the one hand say Muslims here will share our values, but we're going to work with the dictators and even He mentioned positive things about Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, and others who are really thugs and vicious tyrants that create these militants.
They invited the father of the Orlando shooter to sit behind Hillary Clinton at her rally. And then they decided, oh, that was a bad strategy move. But they invited him to sit right in front of the cameras.
And it shows they really, Secret Service, whoever was vetting the people coming to sit behind her, don't care about Islamist ideology. He supported the Taliban, etc. He may not be a violent extremist, but his ideology wasn't part of it. And now if we start to vet it, not only will it be important to immigrants trying to get in, but even security clearances and other things for Muslims already here will become much more germane to keeping us safe and secure.
I thought that was extraordinary. I just thought that was extraordinary. That was the strategy, to put him where he was sitting. Look, during Trump's news conference Monday, he highlighted the immigration issue, making a comparison between Hillary Clinton and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. He also tweeted about it, quoting a Drudge Report headline with the hashtag America's Merkel. What do you make of this comparison, Dr. Jasser?
Well, bottom line is I think the reason Brexit happened was the EU is falling apart because it lost its national sovereignty, its national identity. 81% of British Muslims say they're Muslim first and British second. I think Angela Merkel and the German country is starting to have to realize that their German nationalism, their security is going to have to protect itself from the insurgency of many who bring with them a sense of no borders, a sense of Caliphism, Salafi jihadist ideology. Now, most Muslims, I don't believe that, but they haven't been vetting for it. They just sort of let everybody come who's a refugee. And I can tell you as a Muslim, you know, I have family in Aleppo and Damascus. They don't welcome everybody migrating from the areas of ISIS. They say, wait a minute, are you with us in secular ideas or are you for a theocracy? And Europe hasn't done that. And America, I think, is going to have to lead them rather than leading from behind.